Hello and welcome to Mindful Living, where we explore the art of living with the intention, balance, and inner peace. I am Avik, your host, guiding you through conversations on health, meditation, mental well being, mindfulness, and the mind body connection. Each episode features expert insights to help you grow, heal, and thrive. So, take a deep breath, relax, and join us on this journey to a more mindful and fulfilling life. So, let's get started.
Hello and welcome back, listeners, to another interesting and exciting conversation on the Mindful Living podcast, where we explore the power of mindfulness, authenticity, and personal growth in transforming our lives. I'm your host, Sana, and today we have a truly remarkable guest joining us, Jem Fuller. Jem Fuller has lived an adventurous and diverse life, from being a backpacker and fire dancer to a corporate leader and now a coach, retreat leader, and author. His latest book, The Art of Conscious Communication for Thoughtful Men, explores how we can develop more mindful, authentic, and meaningful conversations in both our personal and professional lives. Jem believes that conscious communication, mindfulness, and radical self acceptance are the keys to creating stronger relationships and living a fulfilling life. We'll dive deep into these topics today and more as we explore how to communicate with intention and lead with love. So, Jem, welcome to the show, and it's an absolute honor to have you with us today.
Wow, thank you so much, Sana. It's an honor to be on your show. Thank you for having me.
Lovely. So, Jem, you have had an incredibly diverse journey. I mean, from a backpacker to a corporate leader and now a coach and author. How did your experiences shape your understanding of conscious communication? How do you define conscious communication?
Well, maybe I can start with the last question first. So the definition of conscious communication, quite simply, to be more conscious of anything is to be more aware of it. So the more conscious we are of something, the more aware we are. So in the context of communication, it's just about being more aware of the communication itself, more aware of the people involved, including you and the person or other people that are in the communication, aware of the higher purpose of the communication. For what purpose are we in this conversation together? To be aware of all the different elements. And communication, the definition quite literally for communication originally comes from the Latin word communicario, which means a sharing, or communicare, the Latin verb as well, also just meaning to make common. So the word common and communication come from the same place. So really communication is when we come to an understanding with each other. It's not a telling. It's not me telling you something. And there's so much about curiosity and open-mindedness and leaning in to try and understand the other person as well, as well as communicating what you feel or what you think or your ideas, but also really seeking to understand what the other person, where they're coming from, And it doesn't mean we always need to agree. Of course, we can still disagree, but we can disagree consciously and beautifully as well,
Yeah, that is true. And about
Yeah, go on, you go.
yeah, and about your journey, your
Oh yeah, wow. So how does experience and all of the journeys that we've been through in our life and all of the meaning that we gave to events, something happens in your life and then you make it mean something. And hopefully we learn from our experiences. Sometimes it takes us a while. We might bang our head on the same doorway a few times before we learn to duck.
yeah.
But yeah, for me, I was very. It's like I was thirsty I couldn't quench my thirst for foreign cultures and to connect with people in cultures very different to mine. I grew up in a city in Australia, in a western suburb. Like a very standard kind of Western civilized suburb in Melbourne, Australia. And as soon as I turned 18, I just couldn't get far enough away. And I was really so fascinated and curious and driven to travel into cultures that were very different to mine. I wasn't interested in traveling to places that were similar to where I grew up. And I didn't know this at the time. I just thought, oh, I'm just adventurous and I just want to see the world. But now, with the benefit of hindsight, I look back and can realize that I was driven to connect cross culturally, to connect with people who grew up in a very different environment to me, geographically, culturally, spiritually, different food, different language, different ideas on the world, and I found that really fascinating. And I used to love to try and communicate with them, and if I couldn't speak the language, I would try and learn some of the language, or using lots of hand gestures, lots of communication with no words even. And so that really did shape me a lot because I traveled for many years. Right through my 20s, I was traveling, and it wasn't until I became a father in my early 30s that I had to settle down and get a job, so to speak, so that I could feed the children. But up until my early 30s, I was just traveling and traveling and traveling, and it really helped me develop the ability to communicate across a very diverse range of people. And so now in the corporate world, as a leadership coach, I can use those experiences to help leaders create diverse environments and create cultures inside organizations that are open to a diverse range of thinking and solution creation and different people, whether it's genders or backgrounds or influences or demographic or, and I actually really passionately believe that to solve the biggest problems, we need to expand the bandwidth, the range of input, right? If we're only trying to solve a problem with a very narrow bandwidth of people, so white middle class males, say for example in a corporate boardroom, then the range of ideas is very limited because they've all come from the same background. Whereas if we have a room of people who come from a very, very diverse background, then we've got a much broader bandwidth of creative solution, creativity, ideas. And so I think diversity is not just about equality and trying to make it fair for people, which it is. That's beautiful. I think diversity actually is imperative and important to solving the biggest problems.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, your book, The Art of Conscious Communication for Thoughtful Men, it focuses on mindful and intentional dialogue. Why do you think it is so important in today's world specifically? Why is it so relevant?
Oh, it's so important because what's been happening, and we can notice this, and there's different elements that play into this, but social media has had something to do with it, and now artificial intelligence has had something to do with it. But the division that's being created, so people who have different ideology or different political beliefs are being fueled because of all of the different factors. They're being fueled to be even more aggressive towards each other, and even if it's just in the communication, but cancelling each other and shouting at each other across these digital divides of difference. And it's like, it's polarizing people. So you're either pro-vax or anti-vax. You're either Democratic or Republic. You're either pro-life or pro-choice. And if, people are getting very, very defensive in these camps, what's actually going on there is just ego.
Yeah.
Ego is our sense of identity, and it's fine. We have to have an ego. We've all got a sense of who we think we are. That's okay. But when we have no awareness of the ego, it's driving the bus. And the ego is very, very defensive because the ego believes, well, the ego's purpose is to keep us safe originally, right? And so the ego believes that if its ideas get attacked, so just say, for example, you were pro-choice, say, and someone came to you who was a pro-lifer and they started attacking your ideas. But from the ego's point of view, the ego takes that like a real threat, like a life threat. Same as if a lion was running over to eat you. Do you know what I mean? The ego's like, oh no, we're under attack. And so the ego gets very, very defensive. And when we get defensive, we're not listening to the other person's point of view. We're not seeking to understand. We're just defending the way we think things should be. So I believe that if we can practice mindfulness, and the practice of mindfulness meditation, as you know, Sana, is practicing coming to a place of pure observation, just as consciousness, right? Not identified with an idea, not identified with an emotion, not identified with a belief, just simply observing. And as we practice this, we're stepping outside of ego, stepping more into the spiritual experience that we can have as humans, that we can access. And from that spiritual perspective, we're actually all one. You know, it's a place of love, not fear. Ego's fueled by fear. Spirit's fueled by love. And the better we get at coming from this place of love, the less defensive we need to be. And so you and I could be having a conversation and you could have a very different opinion to me. And that's beautiful. And I can soften, I can open my mind. I don't need to get defensive. I can put my ego to the side and listen to you. You know, and if you're interested and you ask me to explain how I feel about it, then you can listen to me. Now we're in communication together, not apart, you know. And so I think it's really, really important because humanity at the moment, it's interesting, you know, the scales could tip either way. We really could tip in the self-destructive direction as a species. But I believe, and I'm guessing you do too, that we can do some beautiful things to tip the scales in the right direction for humanity and hopefully raise consciousness, you know.
Absolutely. Explained very well, Jem. But some might argue that being too conscious and intentional in communication could make conversations feel rigid or inauthentic. How do you respond to those who believe that spontaneity is lost when communication becomes too deliberate?
So for me, conscious communication is not having a deliberate, intentional agenda that I'm stuck to. So there obviously there may be an outcome that I'm hoping for. So if I have a piece of communication that I'm thinking I really want to go and sit with this person and share this with them, then there's an outcome that I'm hoping for. But mindfulness is to be present in the moment. When you're thinking about this is what I'm going to try and convince this person, and you're thinking about the future and the outcome, you're not in the moment. You're not being mindful. When you're being mindful, you're completely present. So when you are completely present, that is completely spontaneous. If I'm sitting with you and listening, or if it's my turn to be speaking, but I'm completely present in that moment, then that is the definition of spontaneity, and the conversation will flow and it will go where it goes. And then the ability to also elevate a kind of above the surface level, to elevate above the communication and still have some awareness of us together and where we're going, and then to even have the awareness and say, I think we're getting a little bit off track here, and to come back down and gently guide us back on track with the conversation. You know, that's also conscious. That's a higher level of consciousness as well.
True. That's true. And in your view, how does radical self-acceptance contribute to better communication? If you can share some insights on how we can practice this in our daily lives.
So for communication to be successful or beautiful, for me to understand you, I need to be able to see you, not just with my eyes, but to see you. You know the definition of namaste, I see you, right? So for that to happen in communication, I need to be able to perceive you. Now, I can only perceive you through my filters. So at the moment, all I can all I have is the sound of your voice, right? And if our cameras were on, I would have a visual information that tells me that you're there. If we were sitting in the same room together, there would be touch. We could shake hands, or there would be all the other senses would be switched on. But all of this information that I'm receiving that is coming from you goes through my own processing ability inside my mind, right? I receive the bits of information, but it goes through my filters, my biases, my traumas, my lenses, my everything in my life. So we could have two people in the room with you, Sana, and you're just being you, but these two people could have a very different perception of you because of their past, because of their biases and their lenses. So one person might sit in the room with you and experience this lovely person, and they might tell you, I met this person, Sana, and she's really lovely and I liked her. The other person could be sitting in the same room at the same time and say, no, something didn't feel right about this woman. I don't particularly like her. That's not because of you. That's because of their past. Okay. So I know I'm taking a while to explain this, but I'll get to the point. When I'm not okay with myself, right? So if I've got a lot of baggage, if I've got a lot of trauma from my past that I'm not resolved with, then I've got a lot of static, a lot of noise in my mind. If I don't have inner peace, then if I'm not happy with myself and my relationship with the past and with life, there's a lot of noise, so to speak, in my mind. There's a lot of filters. There's a lot of lenses that I'm trying to experience life through. So the less okay I am with myself, like the noisier it is inside my internal world, the less clearly I can see you. So I can't see you very clearly because I've got too much stuff going on inside me, too much noise to try and perceive you through. So radical self-acceptance is a practice. It's like yoga or meditation. It's not, you don't just, take the red pill or the blue pill and then all of a sudden you have it. It's a daily practice. But as we practice radical self-acceptance, which means completely accepting yourself in this moment for being who you are, which is who you're supposed to be, because reality tells us that there you are right now, just the way you are. Apparently, you should be the way you are right now because you are. And this radical self-acceptance with meditation and practice over time creates an inner peace. So the more peaceful I am inside my mind, the less noisy it is, the less static there is inside my mind, the more clearly I can see you. And so when I can see you more clearly, I can sit with you and connect with you more purely, more authentically, more easily, and I can understand you better. So yeah, look, I think it's ultimately important for communication and connection and relationship to practice radical self-acceptance as a pathway to inner peace.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then let's say if we have a lot of past or baggage with us due to which we are not able to clearly see or, get that perception clear, what are steps you recommend we should take in our daily lives?
Yeah, it's a great question. So when something is in our subconscious, or perhaps the trauma is stored somatically, or cellularly in our body, and we're not aware of it, then how do we let go of that trauma, or how do we smooth out the creases? How do we heal and repair ourselves when we're not aware of it, right? So then when we get triggered, so when something happens in the environment around you, you see something or someone says something, or you scroll on social media and something upsets you. So when you get triggered, so you've been in a certain state of body and mind, and then there's an external stimulus, and all of a sudden you're triggered into an unpleasant state. In that moment, that's the opportunity to smooth out the creases of trauma from the past. And you don't even need to know what the trauma was. In the moment that you get triggered, the first step is gratitude. So I'm grateful that I just got triggered now, because now it's gone from being subconscious to being conscious. I'm aware that I'm upset, and I'm aware that that thing upset me. So now I have the opportunity to let it go. And then people ask me, yeah, but Jem, how do you let it go? What does that, what do you actually do to let it go? And I combine three things. I combine breath, I combine the power of word, language, and physicality. So when I get triggered, the first step is gratitude, and I say out loud, I'm grateful I've just been now triggered because I have the opportunity to let this go. And then I raise my shoulders up, right? So this is the physical part. Raise my shoulders up, take a deep breath in. This is using the breath. And then as I breathe out, like a big sigh, and I drop my shoulders, so to fully let go of the tension in my body, and I say the words, I let this go. So combining breath, physicality, and the power of word, and I let this go. I physicalize it. Now, depending on how big the trauma was, will depend on how many times you need to let it go over time for it to smooth out. You know, if it was only a small thing from the past, you can smooth out those creases more easily. If it was a big trauma for you, then maybe it takes years of letting it go for you to not be triggered anymore. But this is a practice. Again, you know, letting go of anything that affected you in the past. You don't arrive at a finish line. There's no finish line. This is a life practice of letting go of triggers, you know, and it's just a beautiful way to be. So that's my advice for that.
That is beautiful. And then how do you apply these um, techniques or this approach in a corporate environment, especially for leaders or managers or even, the employees?
So when I'm coaching leaders and helping them create team environments where people can flourish and thrive, a lot of it is self-awareness and self-management development, because through practices like mindfulness meditation and self-acceptance and ego awareness, so just becoming more and more aware of your ego and then getting better at not being driven by your ego, we can actually develop the ability to be less affected in the workplace. So so that we're not taking things personally. You know, so that if you and I are in the same team, and we've got our core values, say we've done some work and we've got our mission and we've got our vision and we've agreed on some core values as a way that we all agree to show up and behave and do our work together. And then just say one day you step out of alignment with the values and you do something that's not values aligned. Rather than me taking it personally and being personally offended by you, which is not going to help, because then I'm going to come, which is ego, and then I'm going to come to you and be upset with you and, Sana, how dare you talk to me like this? And then you'll get defensive, and we're like, this is happening, right? But if I can be not personally offended, so it's not about me, you know, whatever's going on for you has happened, then I can come to you and still support you with loving accountability, because we're on the same team together and we've given each other permission to hold each other accountable to these values. And I can do it much more effectively because I'm not upset with you. And then I can come up to you and say, hey, Sana, are you okay? What's going on for you? I noticed that you haven't been in alignment with our values this week. What's going on? Are you okay? You know.
That makes sense. So in your TEDx talk, Jem, you mentioned the importance of leading with love. What does leading with love look like in the context of communication, especially in challenging situations?
Leading with love is for the greater good, you know. As opposed to leading with fear. Leading with fear is I'm going to look out for myself. You know, I need to make sure that I'm going to survive here, and that means that if I have to step on you or push you aside so that I will survive, then I will do that. That's leading from fear. Or if I have to keep you small because I'm fearful that you might be successful and take my job, or you might be successful and leave, or, so I'm leading from the fear of you doing well, or the fear of me losing my job, or the fear of us losing our clients. This is all scarcity and aggressive. Leading with love is leading from a place of abundance. There's enough. There's more than enough for all of us. In fact, you expanding into your potential is me expanding into mine as well. If I'm your leader and I see you thriving and flourishing, and even perhaps developing to the point where you say, "Hey, I'm on to my next chapter," and you leave, that's beautiful. I should be wanting that for you. Leading with love means that you really genuinely want the best for others. And I know that ends up creating better leaders, and better work environments where people flourish together and we get better results. And then you look at the profit. You don't have the profit in front going more money, more money, more money, more money. The profit follows behind when you focus on love. And I know that the corporate world still doesn't want to use the word love. I know that.
Yes.
And there's people like Marcus Buckingham, who is, you can look up Marcus Buckingham on YouTube, and he is passionately talking about how we should be embracing love. We should be leading with love. And then people say things like, yeah, but if you're a leader coming from a place of love, what happens when you have to sack someone? Right, or fire someone? How do you do that if you love them? And he explains it really well. He says you can even do it. You can help someone move on to a better place for them, and if they're not right for the organization, you can help them move on even more effectively when you're coming from a place of love, because then the conversation looks like, hey, I care about you. I care about you, and I care about the people in this team. And I'm not sure if this position for you in this team is what's going to help you expand into your potential and live your best life. I want to talk with you about that. And you can come from a place of love and still be clear and still be honest and upfront and kind all at the same time.
Wow. That is great. That is really great. And you have spoken about how the quality of our relationships determines the quality of our life. And that is absolutely true. I totally believe about that. So, what practical steps can individuals take to nurture their relationships, whether it's with your loved ones or your partner or your business partners, your clients, your colleagues, team members, through conscious communication?
I'm not sure if you've read Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The 7th habit he calls sharpen the saw, and he talks about a quadrant model. And in the quadrant model, there are things that take up our time that are urgent and important. There are things that take up our time that are urgent but not really important. And then there are things that are important but not urgent, like our relationships or our health or our long-term strategic planning or our goal setting. So these things, it's not urgent. If I spend time with my wife today, or if I spend time exercising today, that's not urgent. If I don't exercise today, I'll be okay tomorrow. But in the long term, it's going to have an impact on me, right? So this is quadrant 2, things that are important but not urgent. Now, these things don't tend to just accidentally happen, right? Because most of us are so busy. So I schedule time. If I could show you my calendar now, every Monday between 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. is blocked out in my calendar. No one can book into my calendar over this time on a Monday, and it's just for quadrant 2. So things that are important but not urgent. And specifically, I have a whole hour dedicated to relationships. So every Monday in this time, I'm thinking about my key relationships and what can I do to invest in those relationships. And whether that's just a phone call to a loved one, or whether it's me booking some time to take my wife out for dinner, or whether it's booking in some time to take the kids camping, or, and then we can look at people and understand their love languages. And if someone's love language is quality time, book some time with them. If someone's love language is words of affirmation, write them a love letter and hide it in their sock drawer. If someone's love language is acts of service, then go and fold the washing for them. Just invest conscious intention in nourishing the relationships that matter to you.
True. That is true. Great. And before we wrap up, Jem, connection with nature is another key principle for you. So, how can spending time in nature improve our ability to communicate mindfully and connect more deeply with others?
Well, there's some fascinating research that's being conducted around this topic of nature immersion and how healthy it is for us. I just read some research the other day. They're starting to understand that when we immerse ourselves in a forest, for example, and we surround ourselves with trees, it's not just psychological or emotional, it's physiological and biological. So there's actual particles from the trees that are emitted from the trees that land on our skin, and we absorb through our skin as well as through our breath when we breathe. We're actually absorbing the trees, right? So we're actually connected to it all. It's like, what was that beautiful movie where
Avatar.
yes.
I was
And when they tap in, they tap into nature with that cord.
through the hair.
That's it, right?
Yes.
We are actually all connected in this way. We are consuming what's around us. It's an absolute illusion that we are separate to our environment. That is an illusion. We are completely of our environment. And so, anyway, there's some beautiful research, but everyone can experience it. If you walk in the mountains, we run a retreat in the Himalayan mountains in Himachal Pradesh, where every time we take people walking in the mountains, they feel better. When you swim in the ocean, you feel better. When you walk through the forest, you feel better. Everyone feels better. So it's pretty tangible for us to experience the benefits of nature. And what I believe is that when we do it consciously, because I've been, some of my online programs that students have been going through for the last 4 or 5 years now talks about consciously immersing yourself in nature. And that just means that you're doing it with intention. So you have it scheduled in your calendar. Sunday afternoon between 2 and 4 is my nature immersion. And I'm doing this because it's good for my well-being. When you then go and do it because you're doing it consciously, it's almost like the benefits are magnified. And so I've had plenty of students coming back to me saying, wow, I think the benefits are even more because I'm doing it consciously.
Yeah, that is true. Lovely, Jim. That was really a lovely conversation. And if our listeners want to connect with you or explore more about conscious communication with you, how they can do that?
You can find me through my website, jemfuller.com, and you can reach out and contact me through there. I'm very accessible. If you want to follow me on social media, I post on Instagram most days, and helpful stuff on Instagram. That's Jem Fuller. And you can watch my TEDx talk. I just did another I was on the TEDx stage again this Monday, just gone, and so that TEDx talk will be getting published soon as well. So, and look, I love connecting with people. I'm here. My purpose in life is to serve and try and help people raise their level of consciousness. So if you feel like reaching out, please do.
We'll have all the details mentioned in the show notes. And Jem, thank you so much for such a lovely conversation and for sharing your insights on conscious communication, mindfulness, and the importance of leading with love. And your journey and your wisdom, they remind us that how we communicate deeply impacts the quality of our relationships and our lives, whether it's professional or personal. So thank you so much for gracing us with your presence.
You're welcome, Sana. And I just had a thought. If your listeners would like, I can offer a gift. So I have a mindfulness meditation course, and I would like to make it free for your listeners if they like. So you just go to jemfuller.com, go to the courses, find the mindfulness meditation course, and on the checkout page, there's a coupon code. And if you just type the word podcast in there, it'll make the course free for you and you can download it and keep it forever.
Lovely. That is lovely. We'll have the same mentioned in the show notes. And for our listeners, if you would like to dive deeper into Jem's teachings, be sure to check out the show notes along with this episode on your favorite podcast platform. And thank you to all of you for tuning into this episode of the Mindful Living podcast. And remember, the way you communicate can transform not only your relationships, but your entire life. So stay mindful, stay connected, and we'll see you next time. This is your host, Sana, signing off.